This week, we're in Austin, Texas, where someone here will have their personal treasure selected for display at the National Geographic Museum in Washington, D.C.
This has one of the best stories in Texas history.
The gun itself was used and owned by a famous Texas Ranger.
It could run up to $50,000 easily.
50.
One of a kind.
1,000.
All aboard!
I'm Curt Doussett.
I'm Kinga Phillipps. Yeah! We're searching the country for items with fascinating history.
This is George Washington's actual signature.
This was possibly made by Thomas Edison. This is the gun that killed Alexander Hamilton.
And objects with unexpected value.
Between $20,000 and $25,000.
Oh, my God.
$80,000.
The object that most belongs in a museum is...
We're on the hunt for America's lost treasures.
We've invited people from all over Texas to bring their personal artifacts to the Bob Bullock Texas State History Museum.
I'm excited to be able to show off an item that's been in my family for 110 years. It's my grandfather's Winchester 73.
These binoculars belong to Bonnie and Clyde, and I'm excited to maybe learn a little more history about it.
Hey, Kinga.
Hi, Curt. Welcome to Texas.
We're teaming up with the experts here to determine which one of these items belongs in a museum.
I'm just tired of all the family after the holidays and thought I'd get away and see if I can find out what this very unique saddles were.
I just don't believe I could be any more excited if you gave me a brand new speckled pup for Christmas morning.
Proud.
Right. Well, welcome to America's Lost Treasures. We're excited to have you guys here today, and thank you for coming to our open call here in Austin. Kinga and I are going to be going around to see the items you brought in and get to know your story as well.
Well, some of your objects will be selected for further investigation, and then by the end of the week, one of you will be chosen to share your special item with the world in a National Geographic exhibit.
Let's check out your treasures.
I grew up in Oklahoma, and this is right up my alley.
Really?
Yeah, why is it here?
I love it and treasure it. I know everything there is to know about it, except I don't know what it's worth, and I'd like to find out.
Well, I want to know why it's so significant, other than the fact that it's beautiful.
This saddle was won by rodeo legend Jim Shoulders. Jim Shoulders was all-around champion cowboy in 1956 and went on to win many more championships. He's like the Babe Ruth of rodeo.
This is a kind of a prize, an award.
Yeah, like a trophy.
When was this made?
1956. I was just a pup, and you hadn't even been thought of.
Nope.
And this is unique because if you notice on the fender skirts, they got tired of making him champion saddles, so they just added 1956, 57, 58. He won another one in 49. So I guess they just got tired of furnishing him with saddles, so they'd just make new fender skirts for the saddle.
Well, how do you know so much about rodeos?
I was born and raised around rodeos and competed, and that's what I do now. Jim was a hero of mine probably from the time I was 7 years old. I'd wore him for autographs every time I would see him, and as I got older, be around him more. He's been going now for 4 years, but we think about him every day.
Thank you for bringing this in. It's a great piece, and I like that you're honoring a friend.
You can never honor Jim Shoulders enough. He's a true American legend.
The Babe Ruth of rodeo? If this checks out, I'll be sitting pretty.
Beautiful. Hard to dance to, but thank
Glad
you
you
so
liked
much.
it.
So what is this?
This is the Great Seal of the Confederacy. It is gold.
You're from the South?
Sir,
There we go.
I'm not happy unless I'm treading water in the Gulf Stream. And I would
what's that?
prefer only to drink from Dixie cups. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, gave this to my great-great-grandfather for his efforts for the lost cause.
Our experts say that gold-plated seals like these can go for as much as $3 grand at auction, but nothing compares to the original dies, which are already on display in Virginia.
This is Willie Nelson's hair.
Wait,
What?
We wrote to Willie Nelson, asked for a hair, and he sent us a hair, very literally, which
You wrote to Willie Nelson and said, may I please have a hair?
Yeah, it's the letter right here. He explained it all. Promised not to clone him.
You actually had a promise not to clone him.
Yeah, it's in the letter there. This piece fits into the practice in Europe of churches collecting saintly relics, and people would go on pilgrimage to see them. And celebrities are sort of our modern-day saints. Everything they touch has this kind of aura.
Now I understand the city's slogan, keep Austin weird.
Oh my gosh.
I have a taxidermied pink flamingo head.
That is, interesting. I saw this map and I had to come over right now. Tell me about this map, please.
This map belonged to Santa Anna. This was a map of Zacatecas, which was his first big campaign.
In 1835, Texas, still a part of Mexico, was rebelling along with other Mexican territories, including Zacatecas. Santa Anna set out to challenge the rogue states. He regained control over all but one, the Republic of Texas, which won its independence in 1836.
This was hand-drawn, on site. It's got watercolor inset. You can see where the military installations were, and this is the complete map of the town.
How do you know this belonged to him, and then where did you get this?
This was captured at San Jacinto, and what we understand from history that at the time, many of Santa Anna's belongings were auctioned off. My dad was an avid and passionate collector, and back in the early 60s, him and a group of fellows would sit together with their boxes full of documents and lay it out on the floor and actually just swap and trade. No money was exchanged.
This is actually really, really exciting. I love maps. When I saw this, I was like, where's Kinga? Get her out of here. If this map documents a key battle in Santa Anna's campaign, it could be something grande.
What's this? Are you putting on the red light over here?
Yes, this is a caboose lantern that belonged to my grandfather.
A caboose lantern?
He managed the cars for the Southern Pacific Railroad in Victoria. From the engine to the caboose, there was no way with the noise that you could ever yell or whatever. So the lantern was used as a signaling. It would tell them how to brake, how to take a car off.
So there were specific signals that these men, like your grandfather, had to know.
Correct.
You seem to know a lot about this, but is there anything else that you'd like to know?
Well, I'd like to know kind of the value of it. My husband thinks it's a piece of junk.
Well, maybe we can prove him wrong. Catherine. Hi.
Hi.
There's so many interesting things. I'm sure you're wandering around, but I want you to take a look at this.
The blue paint is in pretty good overall condition, not a lot of dings or dents.
It has the wick.
The wick right there, which is good. A lot of them are missing pieces.
Right. I've never taken it apart.
There are different kinds of lamps, and they tend to go in the, I don't know, $300 to $500 range. But I would say that with the additional provenance details, like the fact that it came from your grandfather on an actual train, and you've got the number, I would say that it's worth several $100s more than that.
Oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait to go home and tell him that this isn't a piece of junk and we're keeping it.
You tell him we said so.
Okay, thanks.
It's a neat lantern, but I'm gonna keep looking.
This one is a special gun.
Can I hold your special gun?
This gun was issued in 1885.
I'd like to shoot that all day.
We knew that in Texas we were going to see a lot of guns, so we were sure to bring along Larry, our firearms expert. What'd you find here?
A very interesting gun.
Really? Holy, can I hold it?
Sure. The gun itself, the Colt, was used and owned by a famous Texas Ranger, kind of legendary.
And who's that?
Captain Ali. He was known to be somewhat flashy and did things in his own style.
Is this a real?
We believe that to be a real ruby.
A real ruby?
Yes.
Yeah. Jeez. And how did you get it?
Well, we got it through some reputable collectors and dealers in South Texas many years ago.
So tell me what you'd like to find out about this.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First, to authenticate that it was Captain Ali's gun.
Yeah.
And second, to see was it one that was actually operational and operated, or was it more of just a ceremonial gun that would...
All right, so Larry, tell me what you can about the gun.
Well, for the serial number, I know this gun was made in 1930, which puts it before Ali's service as a Texas Ranger. The grips are very unique.
I would say they're probably made in Mexico. Looks like Mexican silver.
Yeah.
Has a ruby and the Texas Star.
You think that's a real ruby?
It looks like it. I mean, this is a good Colt pistol.
If we could verify how it was used, do you think we could be looking at something that is pretty
something that should be in a museum? I'm
Really?
surprised it's not in a museum already.
This has one of the best stories in Texas history. This fiddle was played during the Black Bean Lottery that took place in early 1843 in Mexico.
The Black Bean Lottery is part of a famous story of a failed escape by Texas soldiers from a Mexican prison.
That made Santa Anna mad, and when they recaptured them, he was going to kill all of them, about 170 some odd men. His officers said that's just not acceptable. So they filled a clay pot with about 150 white beans and 17 black beans and lined up the Texas soldiers, and they drew a bean. If they drew a white bean, they would be spared. If they drew a black bean, they would be shot at sunset. And this fiddle was played by a Mexican officer while the Texas men drew their fate out of that clay pot. The last man to draw a white bean was a man named John Brophy, and the officer playing this fiddle gave it to Mr. Brophy.
How did this come into your possession?
After he died, his family traded this fiddle for a set of dishes with a merchant in Brenham. And my grandfather, who was a teenager, he traded his cheap violin and his cornet for this fiddle. And then it's been in our family ever since.
That is one of the best stories I have ever heard. If I can verify that this violin was played during the Black Bean Lottery, I'll have a pitch-perfect American treasure.
I got it from my grandmother. She passed away in 1981, and when it came in my possession, it already had the string. Then I've never taken it off because it's very fragile, and I didn't want to be the one to destroy it.
People have been known to store manuscripts, artwork, and other treasured documents in their Bibles, and this one dates to 1850. I can only pray. First time in at least 30 years, right? How you doing over there? You doing okay?
Kind of emotional.
Okay. It's like
spent some time.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Wow. Thank you for not taking care of the string. Okay, there we go.
Right.
There we go.
If you take the string.
We're at the Bob Bullitt Texas State History Museum, where people from all over Texas have brought us their personal treasures, one of which is this centuries-old Bible.
Thank you for not taking care of the string. Okay, there we go.
Right.
There we go.
If you take the string. And hold your hand up and flat like that. I believe these pages are a bit out of order. And so it may have been a portion had fallen out and it was just put back together. So it's very, very dry. Oh, my. Oh, and look, here's a little bit of water damage. So some pages are sticking together. Well, I was hoping to see some pages of handwriting and genealogy. Unfortunately, in the condition that it's in, and without that stuff, I would venture to say it's in the probably $2,000 range. It wasn't about
in
the
a
price.
value, no.
I know.
A delicate family treasure that's just too fragile to investigate further.
Hi there.
Hi. What you got there?
Well, this is a hunting horn from the King Ranch, which of course is an iconic part of Texas. And this one in particular is engraved to Bob Kleberg. Bob Kleberg became Richard King's lawyer. He ended up marrying his daughter, and he ended up from the 1880s to the 1930s actually running the King Ranch.
Tell me more about the King Ranch.
Well, the King Ranch is in South Texas. It totaled at one time over 1 million acres. It was the first place to develop an American breed of cattle. So they have developed Triple Crown winning racehorses. And it's just always been a fixture of Texas.
May I?
Oh, yes. Legend has it that he would blow the horn when he wanted another round of drinks.
That is a good reason to blow a horn.
Yes, it is.
We might actually be blowing this horn here in a minute. How did you get this?
I have a friend in San Antonio that decided to pare down his collection. I think we paid about $1,000 for it.
Charles, can you come here for a second? He's our appraiser.
Ah.
If I had to put a value on it, I'm going to put a little bit of a range. It's a one-of-a-kind King Ranch item, so $3,500 to $5,000.
Wow.
Wow.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Well, do you know how much they paid for it?
No.
$1,000.
Well, I'll give you two.
It's okay. This looks awesome. Tell me about this gun.
This is a Winchester model 1873. It's the gun that won the West.
Oh, really?
It is one of the most popular guns ever produced in this country. Belonged to my granddad. He carried that. He was a cowboy out in the West Texas in the late 1800s, and then he was a lawman in southern Oklahoma. The gun has been in my family for 110 years.
Wow.
I purposely have not restored it because I wanted its natural condition.
I mean, it was the gun of the time. It was produced for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's quite a stretch for a gun.
Yeah.
Men carried these all over the West, and they were chambered. Usually, Colt made the same caliber pistol. So they had the same caliber rifle and pistol, same ammunition. They were a nice, fast-shooting gun, quick.
Well, thank you for bringing this in. I mean, obviously, it's going to mean a lot to you, and I give it back to you.
I appreciate it.
Mostly because it's heavy. Thanks for bringing it in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so, Larry, taking a look at that gun.
Mm-hmm. Realistically,
what would you say? I mean, you and I have looked at a lot of guns today.
Yes, we have.
I want to pick one of these guns to, you know,
That's a neat gun. That's a good heirloom. It's an older gun, but it doesn't have the history we have found in another gun today.
Yeah, I like the one with the ruby in there with all that.
The Texas Ranger handgun.
I mean, you think that's
Colonel
probably...
Ali, that is an awesome gun.
Good.
And I think we can substantiate every bit of it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a great showpiece in the museum.
It's beautiful.
It's 1905, so I've been told.
Tell me about how this came into your possession.
Oh, I love that watch. It was my grandfather's. I wish I could have gone to work with him and see what he did, but I was too little. He was on the railroad. Down from the station was what they called the roundhouse, where they could turn the trains around and hook them up differently, and that's where he worked. He was born in 1875 and died in 1955.
Well, I think this is an incredible piece of American history, and I'll tell you why. Because when the railroads crossed the country, these men would sit in these stations, and really all they had was these watches to make sure that the train was on time.
And they had a few wrecks.
Yep.
I'm sure it's got a lot of history. One of these days, maybe I'll find out, if I'm lucky.
The Transcontinental Railroad was a huge step in this country's growth. Watches like this were vital to running the train safely. And I want to spend a little more time with this one.
It's a patent issued by the state of Texas to a fellow who bought some land in downtown Austin in 1860. It doesn't make it too terribly unique except for the signature at the bottom.
Who's that?
Sam Houston.
Oh, wow. That's an original Sam Houston
signature. Yes,
signature. And where did you get it?
I inherited it. The property described ended up being left to my grandfather, my mother's father. He had it until he died, and we found that in his safety deposit box after he passed.
Joan, can I borrow you for a second?
This is really fantastic. I think that the lot and the property is described here in the center. What's especially important about this piece is the signature by Sam Houston here. And of course you see this huge flourish underneath his name, which is called a rubric. You know, Houston was, people either loved him or hated him. He had a huge ego. And a lot of people feel that this rubric is sort of representative of his oversized personality. But also, part of the reason for these rubrics is to prevent forgeries. A lot of notable people during the time used them. But this is in amazing condition. It's really terrific.
Sam Houston, sign me up. All right, time's up. Kinga and I have to decide which objects could be the lost treasure we're looking for. All right, so tell me what you got.
Well, I got a couple really great items. There was this railroad pocket watch with a lot of nostalgia in the story. Great.
Yeah.
Then there was a saddle from the 1950s. I love rodeos. Belonged to a rodeo legend. Amazing. And then there's a fiddle from the 1840s.
I saw that, yeah.
It was so cool. And the story of the Black Bean Lottery gives me chills.
I don't even know what that is.
I will tell you later.
Well, you're gonna
How
have
about you?
to. I picked 3 things I think are awesome. There was a gun that belonged to a real Texas Ranger legend, ornate. There's a ruby in the handle. There was I love maps. I found a map that belonged to Santa Ana that was captured.
Big deal.
From him. Yeah, it's huge. And then there was this land grant signed by Sam Houston. So 3 really important pieces, I think, for this area's history. Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
You ready to come in second?
Yeah.
All right, let's head back in there. All right.
Okay, that was awkward.
The Texas State History Museum has many documents signed by Sam Houston. While I'm here, curator Joan Marshall is going to take a look at this one and see how it stacks up against what they have in their collection.
I wanted to show you another signature by Sam Houston. And this is on a letter dated from the late 1830s to the Cherokee Nation. And what you see here is the elaborate rubric underneath the signature. You have to know that Sam Houston is one of the most famous Texas patriots and heroes. He led the Revolutionary Army in the decisive victory at San Jacinto, and he served as first president of the Republic of Texas. Now, of course, you have a wonderful signature here as well, but this document is dated 1860, and it would be much more important if it was signed by Sam Houston during his time as president of the Republic of Texas. But unfortunately, it's not, and it's still a nice piece, but probably not as rare as you might hope.
Not what I wanted to hear.
It's quite the family heirloom.
Where is this going to hang in your house?
It actually hangs in the living room rather prominently, so I like to show it off, yeah.
You get to keep it.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm at the Tejas Rodeo to get the lowdown on this Jim Shoulders trophy saddle.
If this saddle won, I would be overjoyed, but not so much for me, but for Jim Shoulders' family and for the hundreds of thousands of Jim Shoulders fans who live throughout the United States.
But first, Yancey James wants to show me one of the rodeo events that made Jim Shoulders famous.
The goal is to stay on 8 seconds, one hand bound, strapped onto the back of the bull with a loose braided rope.
What do they score on?
The best possible score is 100 points. Half of the score going to the bull, his ability to buck, and half of the score going to the bull rider on how well he is able to ride.
So you're a team with your bull?
You're a team with your bull. If your bull doesn't buck good, your score's not going to be good.
And there are no stirrups. Your only point of hanging on is that rope.
That's right. And he's going to take it right now. He's going to wrap it around the back side and wrap somewhat of a half. It's literally tied on the back of this bull.
Buck it.
Here he goes. Bull leaps out of there, sterling spur. Spinning around the left. Couldn't be riding any more perfect. Grabs his tail, gets off.
Wow.
Great bull ride right there.
I'm no professional cowgirl, but Yancey has over 650 rodeos under his belt. If anyone can tell me about Jim Shoulders' saddle, he can. Isn't it beautiful?
That is a beautiful saddle.
So I'm sure you know who Jim Shoulders is.
Well, yes, I do.
Well, I'm embarrassed to tell you that I'm from Oklahoma, and I didn't know who he was.
You should be a little bit embarrassed. If you're
I
from
know.
Oklahoma and you have no idea who Jim Shoulders is. He is the Babe Ruth of rodeo. He dominated in the rodeo sport. He won 16 world championships, and that's a lot. He's in every Hall of Fame that I could speak of in the United States that involves rodeo, and what a great guy, and we were blessed to have him part of our sport.
This was brought to us by a friend of Jim's.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at it. Well, look here, it says it's a Porter out of Phoenix, Arizona.
What's that tell you?
From the 30s to the 50s, Porter was the best made saddle that a man could buy. It says this is an all-around championship right here.
Yeah.
So this would have been his all-around titles. They're missing one, which is 59. When we look here, it says 1956 on the jockey. So that's the year that he actually won this saddle. This would have been the only saddle given away in 1956 for the all-around cowboy. You know, the tooling, you're talking back in 1950, and they're tooling this out. You know this was all handcrafted. There was no machines doing this sort of thing, which makes it very, very unique. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
There's no other saddle like this. This is one of a kind.
This saddle is so much more than a trophy. It's an original work of art, which makes me wonder. Well, of course, the next question then is, what about value on something like this?
Value on something like this. This is kind of the question of the day. We were just looking at a 1950 saddle made by Porter, probably only worth about $500 to $1,000.
Eh.
But you add the Jim Shoulders legacy into it. You can tell that he used it, and being in the rodeo world and what he's contributed to rodeo. You get some rodeo enthusiasts involved and some guys wanting something like this, it could run up to somewhere around.
Jim's tush sat there.
Jim's tush sat right there, and he probably roped 1 million cows on this thing.
I'm with Yancey James, ex-bull rider and co-owner of Tejas Rodeo. I just found out this Jim Shoulders trophy saddle is hand-detailed and one of a kind. If it's valuable as well, I'm throwing it on a horse named American Treasure.
You add the Jim Shoulders legacy into it. It has the good tooling on it. It's marked, it's established. You can tell that he used it. And being in the rodeo world and what he's contributed to rodeo, you get some rodeo enthusiasts involved and some guys wanting something like this, it could run up to somewhere around $50,000 easily.
50?
One of a kind.
1,000.
Correct. It will do nothing but get better. As this saddle becomes older and time comes, it's not going anywhere. So this saddle's be worth a lot of money.
This saddle is the genuine article. It's a revered symbol of Jim Shoulders, his legendary achievement, and the cowboy lifestyle that forged this country. I'm roping this one in.
I'm here at the Alamo in San Antonio, and I brought along Earl's map of Zacatecas.
Personally, the map means to me a connection with my father. He had such a passion with history, and when I pick up the things like the map, it reminds me of him.
I'm gonna go meet with Dr. Winders, and hopefully he can tell me a little bit more about this map and how it was used by Santa Ana. How you doing, Dr. Winders? Curt Doussett.
Hey, Curt. Good to see you.
You too, man.
Go ahead and set it down here.
I will do that.
Let's grab our gloves.
We don't want to damage the map's delicate parchment or its watercolor wash with the oils from our hands, so the gloves are going on. Okay, so I'm gonna let you just kind of dive in it.
Oh, that's nice. I've heard about this map.
Uh-huh.
And I've seen a copy of it, but I've never seen the original. That is incredible. Now, this documents the Battle of Zacatecas. And there was a revolution in Zacatecas prior to the revolution in Texas. And Santa Ana gathers an army, goes to Zacatecas, defeats the Zacatecan militia. This is a manuscript map. So what Santa Ana probably did is talk to his military engineers and say, I need to document my victory here. This could have been prepared for later publication, and now it's seeing the light of day again. This map is so significant because the Texas Revolution was an event that occurred within an ongoing Mexican Civil War. And so by understanding what's happening in Mexico, you begin to get a bigger story.
What value would you put on this, either historically or monetarily, if you could?
The word priceless gets used.
What does that mean, priceless?
Well, it's priceless in the fact that there's not another one.
Yeah. This map's not only a Texas treasure, it's a world treasure. It must have just been intense to face Santa Ana in battle. I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Well, I can help you imagine it.
Somehow I feel you look cooler than I do. I don't know why.
It's the hat.
Is it? It's the hat?
Yeah. Women go for
Is
a
it,
taller
or
hat.
could it be because your pants go all the way down to the lower part of your leg?
Really, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I did.
First step is you're going to reach into your cartridge box, and you're going to pull out a paper cartridge. Carrot. Spit the paper out.
That went well.
Now you're going to pour some powder in the pan, cast the bout to your side, and you're going to pour the powder down the barrel and push the paper in. Clear the line. Ready. Aim. Fire.
Is that supposed to be on fire, that thing?
We'll have someone turn it out.
Okay. So far, Kinga and I have both gotten some good news. But only one of our 6 collectors will get the honor of displaying their treasure in the National Geographic Museum.
Tickets, please, ladies.
Ladies, and we'll just...
How am I doing, Ben?
Good, doing great.
May I touch that, please? Let's see. Will you hold it for me? I'm with Ben Sargent, train conductor and founding director of the Austin Steam Train Association. I'm hoping he'll be able to give me some history behind William's pocket watch. I'd love to tell Bill his timepiece is going on display.
That watch belonged to my grandfather, and it's part of the Texas history of our family. And if that watch got chosen, that would be just great.
All aboard! This is very exciting. So the gentleman that brought this in to me, this was his grandfather's, and his grandfather worked on the railroad. He said it was a very significant timepiece that his grandfather used to time the trains.
Well, it looks like it's a Ball watch, which was kind of one of the earlier companies that made railroad watches. The watch was named after a man named Webb Ball. He kind of invented the standards that railroad watches had to have to keep what we call railroad time, which is where a watch will run without losing more than 30 seconds a week.
Really?
And the way you can tell a railroad watch is, one, it has Arabic numbers instead of Roman numbers because they're just easier to see. And also it's got what's called a lever set.
Look at that, you can open it.
Where you take the bezel off, unscrew the bezel like this. The rules require that everyone carry a reliable watch.
I'm on the Austin Steam Train with Ben Sargent, conductor and train historian. If William's watch turns out to be a rare timepiece, I am set.
It's got what's called a lever set.
Look at that, you can open it.
Where you take the bezel off, unscrew the bezel like this, and you see this little lever right here that you have to pull out, and then you can set the watch. You know, a lot of pocket watches, they set by pulling the stem out and setting it, but they didn't want you to accidentally unset your watch just while you're sticking it in your pocket or something, so they require that. Yeah, this was kind of the heart of the whole operation because everything was run on timetable and train order, and so everybody had to have exactly the same time. All of us who work on the railroad now carry watches.
So the entire time that his grandfather worked for the railroad, this was probably in his pocket, in his hand the whole time.
Every minute he was on duty.
What about the value or something like this?
Well, from what I've heard, one this old is probably, you know, anywhere from $500 to $700 on the market now.
Really?
Yeah. Mine was free. I inherited it from my grandfather, but...
Well, I think definitely the value in this for William especially is in the story and it belonging to his grandfather.
Sentimental value, you bet.
Very sentimental value, but $500 to $700, that's not bad.
Not bad.
Really such a great story with this watch and its association with the railroad. Now, unfortunately, it's not worth as much as I thought it should be, and it is rather common, but that's okay because it's all in the sentimental value for William anyway. So for him, this is a treasure. For our purposes, probably not so much.
Captain Alfred Young Ali was a Texas Ranger for 37 years, who gained notoriety in the 50s for his aggressive tactics in law enforcement. Chris is pretty certain that this gun belonged to Captain Ali, but he's not 100%. So I actually did some research and found a former Texas Ranger, Captain John Wood, who served with Captain Ali. Now Chris is going to meet us there, and hopefully Captain Wood will recognize the gun and tell us how it was used when Captain Ali had it.
Doing well. Well, thanks, man. I'm really excited about this. I've lived in Texas for 30 years, and I've never met a real live Texas Ranger.
Come in.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. At 98, Captain Wood is the oldest living Texas Ranger. He's a 29-year veteran and knew Captain Ali well.
He was quite a character. I was his sergeant for a while. And then I made captain and took his place.
Okay.
But I'd known him for years.
We think we've got a gun that belonged to Captain Ali, and we'd like to have you take a look at it and tell us if, one, you recognize it, and two, how it could have been used. I'll hand this to you.
Yeah, that's his gun.
That's his gun for sure, huh?
Yeah, I know it is.
I'm really excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had thought that this was probably the gun. We had been told that, but we didn't have anybody that had actually seen him with it.
That's great to hear. Well, do you have any other questions for him?
What type of guy was Captain Ali? Was he kind of a rough guy?
He was pretty rough, and he was high-tempered. Director, Department of Public Safety, told me one time, every time the phone rings at night, we think Captain Alley killed somebody.
Oh, and that.
He's high-tempered. He didn't take anything off anybody.
Captain Wood recognizes the gun as Ali's, which is awesome. But I still want to find out if it was used as a service revolver or as a ceremonial firearm. Well, Captain Wood, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me about this gun. It certainly was a pleasure having you verify that it did belong to Captain Ali.
It's just like seeing an old friend.
All right, thank you.
I'll follow you, Chris. Thank you. That is just great news.
Wow.
And you have the violin with you, I see.
Got the violin, yes.
Jody and I have come to the Texas State Library to elicit the help of state archivist John Anderson and violin expert Craig Walker. Jody thinks her violin is part of the 1843 Black Bean Lottery, where 17 men drew their fate and were executed. We want to know if a violin was being played at the time, and if so, is this it?
I've read several accounts of the Black Bean Lottery. This is a handwritten account by one of the survivors. This is his entry for March 25th, which was the day of the lottery and the execution.
May I?
Yeah, you certainly may. I didn't see any mention of a violin or music at all. The most famous published account is Thomas Jefferson Green. He was one of the officers. This is a very detailed sketch of the lottery, and I don't see any musicians there. I have not seen any reference to music, but perhaps they just didn't note that detail.
We're holding on by a string here. But if we can verify that the fiddle's construction is consistent with other violins built in that time period, we'll still have a chance.
Most violins of this type were made in Eastern Europe. This type of inlay pattern was very popular, and with this edging, this kind of like ribbon band around the edge, and it's commonly referred to as a gypsy type violin. I can tell you a little bit more, taking it apart a little bit.
You okay with this, Jody?
Actually,
ask Jody. Let's ask Jody.
I can tell you a little bit more, taking it apart a little bit.
You okay with this, Jody?
Actually,
ask Jody. Let's ask Jody. Stop.
He's the expert.
Anything that I do here is reversible.
Jody and I are at the Texas State Library with state archivist John Anderson and violin expert Craig Walker. If Jody's violin is the legendary fiddle from the tragic Black Bean Lottery, it'll be an American treasure that truly pulls at the heartstrings.
This allows me to take a look inside of the instrument.
Have you ever seen it like this? No. You okay?
I appreciate your trust here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on the inside of this instrument.
What are you looking for there, Craig?
Well, I'm looking the way the neck is attached to the inside of the instrument. Where on this instrument, it's dovetailed into a joint. And then some real early instruments had like a nail holding them on. So that's one way of showing that, that it's of a later time period.
Do you think that this violin could have been played at the Black Bean Lottery?
I really feel that it couldn't have been played there. Seems to be made about 3 decades later than that time period, around 1870, rather than way back at the time of the Black Bean Lottery.
Jody, how do you feel about this? Are you
Oh,
still in your heart?
Crestfallen. I still love the story, and I still want to believe the story because the violin and the Black Bean Lottery just go hand in hand.
Craig, let me ask you this. Without being able to authenticate our story, how much do you think that would be worth?
I think, with a little restoration work, it could be an $1,100 violin.
Thank you. Should we pack this up gently?
Take good care of it.
Craig, you can put that back in there, please.
So I'm disappointed, but I still feel that our violin is an American treasure.
I've arranged a meeting with Jonathan Slayton, who's a highly respected Austin police officer and gun expert. I hope he can tell me how Captain Ali used this revolver and how much it's worth. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing, man?
Hi, good.
All right, let's do this. I brought something here that I'd like you to take a look at.
Wow. This is a Colt single-action Army, also known as the Colt Peacemaker. It was originally produced in 1873, and it was actually a standard issue for the U.S. Army at the time. This is the legendary Colt that won the West right here. So for a modern cowboy like a Texas Ranger, I mean, this is the gun to have right here.
Okay.
As far as how it works, it's what's called a single action, meaning that when you cock the hammer, by pulling the trigger, it does one single action of releasing the hammer, as opposed to more modern-day double-action revolvers that just by pulling the trigger, it cocks the hammer on its own and then releases it on its own.
Do you know anything about how it could have been used back then? A ceremonial firearm has less significance than one that was used on a daily basis. If I can prove that Captain Ali used this as a primary weapon, there's a good shot this is going to D.C.
Captain Ali was a very famous Texas Ranger. As you can see, it's very ornate.
Yeah.
It could have been just something he wore as a dress item. There's two ways to tell if somebody used it or not based on the wear. The first is if where the hands would be used. If you see wear there, like you do right here, you see wear on all these high points.
Yeah.
That indicates that it's actually been fired quite a bit.
Okay.
As well, if you look down the barrel, you can see grooves. It's called the rifling in the barrel. There is some wear on these rifle grooves.
Yeah.
So it does indicate that it was fired. It was used. It wasn't just for show.
That's great news. Is it possible for us to fire this, or is it not safe?
Well, we don't want to fire this today just because we don't want to risk lowering the value of the gun, because a gun like this is already inherently valuable. And then when you add in the custom work and the fact that it was owned and carried by a famous Texas Ranger like Captain Ali, the sky's the limit as far as what the price could be.
Is there a number we could possibly put on this?
$30,000 or more.
Are you serious? That's great. I can't wait to give Chris the good news, but I was really hoping to fire a single action Colt.
Instead of shooting a $30,000 gun, I did bring a reproduction with me. Are you ready for this?
Let's do this.
Contact right! All right, there's 4 targets downrange. You take the 2 on the left, I'll take the 2 on the right. Got it?
Yep.
Move!
Give me blanks.
This training is based off the shootouts that people like Captain Ali went through. We take that and we try to apply it so that we can learn from it now.
Oh, come on. There we go.
All right, you take the 3 on the left, I'll take the 3 on the right. All right, all the targets are down. Good shooting.
Wow, I have a Colt Peacemaker from a legendary Texas Ranger and a hand-drawn map captured with Santa Ana. This may be my hardest decision so far.
We're back at the Bob Bullock Texas State History Museum in Austin. Each of our investigations has offered a fascinating lesson in Texas history. But now, Curt and I must choose our finalists to present to National Geographic and have their item displayed in Washington, D.C. But first, unfortunately, we have to narrow the field. Hi, Bill. How are you?
How you doing today? It's good to see you again.
You too. I met with a real conductor. He told me, as you probably know, this is a ball watch, big name in the railroad watch business. He also said something really interesting, that these guys had to buy law carry watches like this. And not only that, they had to have them synchronized very frequently by actual jewelers. Interesting?
Yes.
Well, here's the kicker. This is worth between $500 and $700.
Well, that's good.
He did say that there are a lot of them around, so it's not very unique, probably not a museum piece for us, but
True.
I think that the sentimental value for you and the story with your grandfather, that is the real treasure here.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you found that out for me. So I'm going to take it home and put it right back in the little glass cage and back on the top of the desk. And one of these days, it'll be inherited by one of our children, our grandchildren.
Earl, how you doing?
Good to see you, Curt.
You too, man. Thanks for meeting me here.
Glad to be here.
This map is amazing. Well, I was able to take it up to the Alamo and meet with Dr. Winders up there, and he said this is an amazing piece of history, and its value is priceless.
I like hearing that word.
Yeah, right? I mean, this is such an amazing piece, but I think I'm gonna go in a different direction.
Okay.
That map is awesome, but the Battle of Zacatecas, though important, was small and is still not very well known. So I'm going with the gun.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We have two exceptional items, and we have Catherine Kane here from the National Geographic Society who's going to help us make a decision. Catherine, let me introduce you to Craig Copeland.
How are you, ma'am?
Craig, such a Southern gentleman. And he has brought in this beautiful saddle, which, as you can see, is a gorgeous item, but it also has an incredible story, as you might expect. This belonged to Jim Shoulders, and Jim Shoulders was one of the most decorated cowboys ever to sit in a saddle. He won 16 championships. He was actually known as the Babe Ruth of rodeos, correct?
Well, I think Babe Ruth was known as the Jim Shoulders of baseball.
I think so too. Exactly. So this saddle has amazing Texas history, has amazing American history. So what we did was we took it to an expert, had him take a look at it, authenticated it, and said this saddle is worth $50,000.
Wow.
Woo!
Pretty impressive.
All right, well, Catherine, Chris brought this revolver to me and hoped that it belonged to the legendary Texas Ranger, Captain Ali. We actually tracked down the oldest Texas Ranger, 98-year-old Captain Wood, and he knew exactly what it was and who it belonged to. He said Captain Ali had this at his side for most of his career. And with that information, we were able to get our appraiser to value this gun at least $50,000. Yeah.
Wow, well, those are incredible stories, gentlemen. These are very important artifacts, and thank you for sharing these items with us. Really, I wish I could have both of them, but I have to choose one. That's my job tonight, and I've made my decision. And I think that the object that most deserves to be in this exhibition is Captain Ali's revolver.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Hey, you got a great piece there. Thanks.
I thought both objects were neck and neck. When you're trying to tell the story of a place like Texas, to have a saddle that belonged to a rodeo king and a revolver that belonged to a Texas Ranger, it's kind of hard to choose between those two things. But the revolver was too special to pass on. The level of the craftsmanship, the stories, I really think it's a treasure. We look forward to having it in Washington in our exhibition.
Okay, sounds great. I look forward to visiting.
Yay.
Yeah, I never thought in a million years that my item would win out of all of these different artifacts in this history of this state. I can't tell you, I'm just thrilled.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was a close one. I was actually very, very surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised too.
Actually, I wasn't surprised at all.
You're a jerk.
It's original.